Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Welcome to the Attorney General's office. For those in the room, appreciate your being here. And for those on the phone, appreciate your presence as well. Please do try to keep your phones on mute until we open it up for some questions at the end of the conference. And with that, I'll turn it over to Attorney General Ferguson.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks, everyone, for being here. We really appreciate it. I'm Bob Ferguson, Attorney General, and joined by the legal team who you've all met before, who've been working very hard over the past, I guess now, month and a week or so. So I really appreciate all of you being here. We want to give our reaction, of course, to the new executive order issued today by President Trump. Bottom line is the president has capitulated on numerous key provisions that we contested in court about a month ago. So on those key provisions, this is a very significant victory for the people of the state of Washington. I can't help but note that I think the last time we were all here was just after the Ninth Circuit had ruled in our favor unanimously. And on that occasion, the president, of course, tweeted afterwards in all caps, "See you in court." It bears pointing out that the administration, since that tweet, has done everything in its power to avoid seeing anybody in court when it comes to the original executive order. Both before Judge Robart at the trial court and with the Ninth Circuit, they filed legal papers requesting delays on getting to this case on its merits, or and even declining to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. There's a reason for that. The president was essentially afraid to see us in court because he knew he would lose again. The original executive order, to be blunt, was illegal and unconstitutional. And the fact that they've now taken a month since Judge Robart issued his original decision to complete a revised executive order, I think speaks volumes about the constitutionality of that original executive order. So I want to briefly go through the key changes that we see as a result of our original litigation. I'll briefly discuss next steps that we see, and then we're happy to take any questions. I may have my Solicitor General, Noah Purcell, and Colleen Melody, who's head of our Wing Luke Civil Rights Unit, assist with answering questions as well. So these, again, are, without going through every detail, what we consider the key differences from the original executive order and the new one. The new one, of course, says it rescinds the original executive order. So number one, the original executive order restricted the international travel of about 500,000 current green card holders who are citizens of the 7 targeted countries. As you know, conflicting guidance from the administration regarding these green card holders contributed to widespread confusion and chaos at airports across our country. The revised order deletes that part of the original order. Green card holders are exempt. Next, dual citizens. The original order, the Trump administration initially said that dual citizens, to be clear, those who have a passport from one of the original 7 countries and either a U.S. passport or a passport from another non-banned country, under the original order, they were not permitted to enter the United States for 90 days. Again, there was shifting administration guidance on that in the days and weeks following the original order. In the revised order, that is deleted. That's gone. Third issue, visa holders. The original order said for 90 days, vetted travelers with valid visas, many thousands of individuals, were blocked from entering the United States. Tens of thousands of previously issued visas were revoked based on that original executive order. Under the revised order, that's deleted. That's eliminated. If you've got a visa, you're able to travel. Next, Syrian refugees. As you might recall, the original executive order suspended entry of refugees from Syria indefinitely. The revised order eliminates that. Syrian refugees are now treated like those from other nations. In other words, there's a 120-day suspension, then they may be admitted to the U.S. following standard vetting process. Another significant area that we address in our court filing address religious minorities. In the original order prioritized religious persecution claims by refugees only for minority religions in countries of origin. In other words, non-Muslims in the targeted 7 countries. The revised order eliminates that language. The number of countries, as you know, has been changed from 7 to 6. Iraq is no longer part of the affected countries. Look, the original rollout of the executive order weeks ago was chaotic, to put it mildly, in part because it went into effect immediately. So there are individuals literally on planes when the original order was signed who are then turned away when they land in the United States. The new order takes effect in 10 days. So I believe that is a week from Thursday, if I recall correctly. It goes into effect a week from Thursday. As a result of our lawsuit, those significant changes have been made. And just as importantly, thousands of individuals have been able to travel to the United States. Reunifications with family members that you've seen at airport scenes all across the country. According to the Department of Homeland Security, about 3,000 travelers from the affected countries arrived between February 4th and February 6th alone. Nearly 3,500 refugees have entered since February 3rd, including more than 1,800 from the 7 originally targeted nations. Washington State has welcomed more than 200 refugees from all nations in that time frame and more than 80 from the 7 nations. So I want to speak about next steps. Obviously, we've only had a couple hours to review the revised, the new executive order that goes into effect on March 16th. The new order, of course, is drastically narrowed. That said, we're reviewing it carefully and still have concerns with the new order. That said, we need to take our time and make sure we have a thoughtful approach on what our next step is going to be. We anticipate having a determination on any potential next steps on the legal front this week. I don't want to be absolute about that. We're still going through it, but it is I anticipate that we'll have something specific to say about whether or not we'll be continuing on the legal front this week. We'll be taking a course of action that we did, I guess now it's been 5 or 6 weeks ago when we spent the weekend here at the office, all the folks here, preparing our original complaint. During that weekend and that Monday, of course, we had numerous conversations with our clients. We're reaching out to businesses. We were talking to colleges and universities to get information about who was harmed by that original executive order in Washington State. And that was a part of our complaint, of course. We now have a significantly revised executive order. We'll go through that same process. We'll be talking to colleges and universities. We'll be talking to businesses. We'll seek to determine the specific harm caused to Washingtonians by this new executive order. At that point, we'll have the information we need to have something more specific in terms of next steps. So those conclude my prepared comments. We'll open up to questions first from folks here in the room. For those on the phone, I'll do my best to repeat the question, and if Noah or Colleen assist in answering a question, they'll identify themselves as well. So we'll start here in the room, then we'll try and take a quick question or two from folks on the phone.
You said that you have concerns.
Go ahead.
What are some of the initial concerns that you're talking about?
So the question goes to what concerns in the new order that we still have. Well, a couple things come to mind. The new order, of course, still has a temporary ban on refugees coming into the United States and still has 6 countries where individuals in those countries face a 90-day period where they cannot come into the country. That is still an area of concern for us because, as you know, as we put forward in our legal case, the intent behind the original order is of deep concern to us. This was motivated in part by the administration to target predominantly Muslim countries. So we still have concerns about that intent, that yes, this is a new order, but there's a continuation here, right, from the original order and the thought that went behind it, the motivation behind it, and the language related to refugees and to now the 6 countries is largely unchanged, so we'll be scrutinizing that closely as well.
Do you think it's the fact that it's targeting predominantly Muslim countries, is that something you're going to be strongly looking at? Essentially, is this a discrimination by religion? Essentially, throw the religion question at you?
Yes, so we'll be looking at that in the same way we scrutinized it originally. So in the same way that was a part of our original claim, the intent behind the order originally, that remains a concern for us, and we'll be examining that as well.
Well,
Yes.
according to the order, it lays out why these countries are being targeted, being a safe haven to terrorists, and so forth. What's your response to that?
We're still reviewing the order, right? And so, look, that'll be a part of our examination. But I want to emphasize those original concerns about the intent of the executive order, the original executive order, I'm still concerned about that. And we need to do our homework and be thoughtful about this, right? It's a new executive order. It's substantially narrowed in focus, but concerns still remain. But we need to make sure we're being thoughtful in our approach and seeing what specifically is the harm here in Washington State that we'd be alleging in light of the new executive order.
Can you explain a little bit,
Yeah.
can you explain a little bit about what the DOJ filed with the Ninth Circuit this morning?
Yes.
And what that does for the previous case, and what parallels, I think what I'm trying to ask, what parallels there may be between that previous case and what you read today?
Yeah, and so I'm sorry if I didn't repeat the previous question, but this one I'll repeat. So the question is, the Department of Justice has filed some papers in court today, so I'll have either Noah or Colleen discuss what that is and what that means. And then the second part of your question again,
Just the parallels, so I mean, it's kind of, maybe the same question you're hearing, it's the parallels between the previous case and that what stands out in this travel order. Is it really the motivation that you went after the first one that could possibly surface again here?
Sure, and then the second part of the question was, well, what parallels? And so I'll turn to either Noah or Colleen to address on what's filed today.
Maybe I'll talk about the Ninth Circuit,
Do that.
because you asked about the Ninth Circuit filing specifically. I mean, that's a very brief filing that essentially just summarizes, in the government's view, what the differences are between the last order and this order, and briefly why, in their view, those are significant changes. And those are significant changes, but they don't say, for example, that the briefing, they still have a brief due Friday in the Ninth Circuit. It's not clear yet what they're saying about that, if they're not going to file that, and so on. I don't know if you...
What just happened today doesn't supplant what the old order is. Does it revoke the old order?
The old order is still on, well, sorry, you mean the temporary restraining order that the district court issued?
No, yes, correct, yes.
Okay, sorry. Yes, that order remains in place, and the original executive order remains enjoined. So it's not entirely clear yet, I would say, what the federal government's position is about what should happen with the existing cases. Other than that, they seem to think that well, maybe I'll let Colleen talk a little bit about the district court, because they also filed something in the district court today. So do you want to talk about that briefly?
Sure, yeah. So the filing in the district court case before Judge Robart is quite a bit longer. It's about 17 pages, and they set out some of these sort of summary of why the new executive order is different than the old one, and then they indicate that that the government plans to implement the new executive order on the 16th. So they sort of in response to your question about, well, what about the TRO? The government has said in the district court that they view this as a new ballgame, and that they intend to implement the new executive order on the 16th at 12:01 Eastern Time in the morning.
So what happens to the original court case, and in your mind, what would you like to see happen? Because the discovery schedule had been set.
So the question goes to what happens with the original case. There was discovery, there's laid out. So I think it's premature for us, having had this one out for 2.5 hours, to get into what procedurally might happen, right? So I just want to emphasize that. We've just had a couple hours, and it's not even clear to us, I think it was mentioned by Colleen and Noah, what Department of Justice is seeking to do. And there has been throughout this case some conflict between what the President is saying publicly and what the Department of Justice advocates on behalf of the government in court, right? The President literally says, see you in court, saying he wants to litigate. The Department of Justice literally at every turn says, we want delays here. So in part for that reason, I don't want to speculate on where this is going to go on the procedural side. But back to the earlier question, again, an area we will focus on, and this is not exclusive, right? I want to be clear, we've only had it for a short period of time, but part of what we'll be focused on is that original intent, right? That doesn't change. Just because they now rescinded the original order and have a new one, that concern that we laid out in our original filing about the intent behind that original executive order, religiously motivated, targeting Muslim countries, that concern remains. Yes, they've now taken Iraq off from that list of 7 countries, but that part of our claim is still an area, I think it's fair to say, that we'll be especially focused on in the next few days. That said, we do need to go through a process of scrutinizing this carefully. Again, talking to universities, colleges, businesses, we have to go back through that same process we had before, and that will take a couple or a few days. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see any immediate harm, as we did in the first case? Do you see anything right now that show immediate limitation on professorships at the university, things like that, just in the first initial review here? So
the question is, do we see any immediate harm? So for example, universities, professors, maybe students, look, that's the kind of thing we'll be looking at. Now, the good news is we have some time to do that. As you recall, in the original executive order, it went into effect immediately, creating all that chaos. Here it goes into effect, I believe, a week from Thursday. So we'll be using that time effectively to answer those very questions. So I don't want to speculate on that as well, right? We've been very fortunate to have clients who've been very helpful with this case. We could not have brought this case without their assistance. I want to be very clear about that. Same with the many businesses that have supported our case. We'll go back and have those conversations again to frankly get at exactly those questions. Yeah.
Are you planning
Do the
on
changes in
coordinating-
the-
Let's go to Essex, hasn't asked yet, yeah.
Do the changes that the administration is making, do the new changes seem intended to knock the legs out from under the argument that there is an economic harm to Washington State?
The question is whether or not the new executive order, whether it seems targeted to knock out the economic harms. I think Essex, you're saying that. I guess I'm not sure if I can speculate as to what their motivation was, but what I can say most assuredly is they knew that defending the original executive order was a loser, right? That's not just me saying it. Look at how Department of Justice litigated this, right? They wanted nothing to do with defending that original executive order once the Ninth Circuit ruled. So I can't get behind why they were doing what they were doing, other than it was clear that they drastically narrowed it in response to what 4 federal judges had to say about their original executive order.
If there is no economic harm, is there then a reason for Washington State to continue challenging?
Oh, no, we'll be looking to the earlier question, right? Whether or not there's economic harm. That's the kind of thing that we'll be looking at, Essex, right? We'll be talking to, hey, are there students who have been admitted to universities, for example, or colleges from abroad who would be coming here but otherwise might not be able to? So those will be examples that we'll be looking at, absolutely. So again, it's the same analysis we did 5 or 6 weeks ago when we first brought this case. We'll need to go back and have that process again.
Are you planning on coordinating with other attorneys generals? I think it's just us and
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Mhm. Thanks for that.
Is there any plans on expanding beyond just those 2?
Thanks for that question. So the question went to other AGs around the country. The state of Oregon is seeking to intervene in the case, as you may know. And I think what I can say is we're as a team, and myself individually, we're in regular communication with other offices that are interested in this litigation around the country, and we're going to continue with that. Each state, of course, they've been extremely supportive, filing an amicus brief, for example, on our behalf. There were how many states? 18 states joined on an amicus brief. So we greatly appreciate the strong support from the state of Minnesota, who was there with us early on, but as well as many other states who have been assisting with an amicus brief, and I have every belief that will continue. So yes, so we're in regular communication with other states on this.
Politically, do you have a stronger case if, say, if you have 25 states as official litigants as opposed to just a couple?
Oh, I don't think, I mean, filing an amicus brief is typically that's the way we assist another state if there's litigation going on, is primarily we file an amicus brief, right? But the state of Virginia, I believe, has filed their own litigation, if I recall correctly. And so each state's got their own dynamics at play. Some want to join, some want to file amicus. Each state will take their own path, but we appreciate the broad support we've received so far from many states. Let's do one more here, and I'll take a couple on the phone. Yeah.
Can you explain whether or not the state of Washington, has the option to pursue its original lawsuit now, and would you decide to drop it, and what would it take for you to drop it?
I'll see if Noah or Colleen want to address that, but the question went to, if I understood it correctly, went to what this means for the original lawsuit. Do we need to file a new lawsuit? Do we simply amend our original complaint? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, will you drop your original complaint if you feel that this is satisfactory, addresses everything in it?
So too soon to say what we're going to do, right? I guess that's the bottom line. I mean, it's the legal issues at play here are complex and numerous, right? And the factual background for us to bring a complaint are complex and numerous. So there's just a lot of work for us to do to make that determination. And look, something I've emphasized from the beginning is I do not take lightly suing the President of the United States, right? There's a very thoughtful exercise that goes on here, and a lot of communication with the legal team, as you might imagine, and with our clients. So I will continue in that same vein for the next few days before making a decision. I don't want to make a rash decision. I want to make sure that we make the right decision on behalf of the people. So I'm going to turn to see if there's anyone on the phone. It's always tricky. A lot of folks will jump in at once, but let's see if you can identify yourself. If you have a question.
Mr. Attorney
Yes.
General, this is Joel Conley from SeattlePI.com. I'm interested in if he is willing to listen what lessons President Trump should take away from what was essentially a major political and legal defeat early in his presidency.
Thanks, Joel. So I think Joel was asking what lessons the president should take from this defeat. That's a good question, Joel. you know, what I would hope that the president and his advisors will take away from what was undoubtedly a painful experience for them is that we are a nation of laws. We have a constitution, and that applies to everybody, even the president of the United States. You know, there was so much about that original order which was troubling. But the chaos it inflicted around our country, you all saw it. It wasn't right. And that went to the manner in which this executive order, the original executive order, was implemented. It lacked the thought, it lacked the consultation that, frankly, one would expect from not just the president, but from a governor or a county executive or the mayor of any town in our country. You'd expect would put some thought into it. And that just did not happen with that original executive order. So I certainly hope, Joel, to answer your question, that they take away numerous lessons from this experience. But if they don't, they can expect to see us challenging future executive orders as well. That's our job, and is to make sure that they're accountable to the rule of law. Other questions from on the phone?
This is Dean. Yeah, hey there, this is Dan. This is Dan Levine from Reuters News. I was just wondering if you do, after consulting with the universities and the businesses, decide that there are serious harms here and you need to litigate and challenge the new order, is there pressure to get into court before Judge Robart and get this to the Ninth Circuit before March 16th, the implementation date? Will you be looking to get it through the chain before that so it doesn't go in and then have to get removed again? Do you feel a certain pressure to move on that time frame? Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I don't feel a pressure, but I feel that what we need is a few days to do our due diligence on this. At that point, we'll be ready to proceed. And we think that gives us sufficient time to be back before Judge Robart in whatever fashion we feel is appropriate. So my answer might be different if this executive order was like the last one that went into effect immediately, right? But it is a 10-day period, and we believe that gives us the time to do the work we need to do to determine our next steps. Other questions from the phone?
This is Gene with the AP. In addition to the economic harms, though, NOAA argued to the Ninth Circuit that a violation of the Establishment Clause harms all of the residents of Washington State. If your concerns about about the motivation for the executive order haven't changed, then it seems like it would be fair to say that you still consider this to be a violation of the Establishment Clause and that the harms are there.
So I'll ask if Noah wants to address that. I'm not sure if there's any more we can really say about that, but Noah, is there anything you want to add on it? If not, I think we've covered
Yeah, I
it.
think the Attorney General's already made clear we are going to be reviewing this very carefully. We have we do have significant concerns, as he said, but we still need to look at this carefully in light of what's actually in this revised order and think hard about our options before we make any decisions.
And so again, so if I can just add it, I just want to be very, very clear. I've made absolutely no decisions about our next steps, not even close to that. We're just not at that stage. We're going to go through and be very careful and thoughtful about getting additional facts in light of the new executive order, and then we'll make a decision afterwards. Anyone else on the phone line?
A little bit. Oh, sorry, just a quick follow-up. Can you expound just on why you think it is, why a violation of the Establishment Clause does harm everyone in the state?
I guess back on the original, maybe our original claim. Noah, do you want to speak to that?
Well, I mean, one of the points we made legally is that the Establishment Clause, one purpose of it is to protect the states from the federal government establishing a national religion or preferring one religion over another. And that principle obviously remains accurate and true. So, we just have to assess how that applies to this new order and to how it affects people in Washington.
How about we take one more question on the phone, then we'll see if anyone else here has a last question. Then we'll stick around afterwards if folks want to have a one-on-one question. Anyone else on the phone? If not, anyone else here in the room before we wrap up? So then, just to conclude, we'll stick around afterwards if you have specific questions. But I want to say how proud I am of the team. The result is an extraordinary one. There's just no two ways around that. The changes in this new executive order are profound and will have significant impacts on people not just in Washington State, but all across this country. And so it is I know I speak for the team in saying that's a rewarding feeling as a legal team to have reached that part of the investigation. That said, we've still got a lot of work to do. We're aware of that, and we're focused on a period of, I think you can anticipate 2 to 3 days through the course of this week in which we'll be doing what I said we'd be doing. We're going to be thoughtful about that, but we are aware that that there is a new executive order that goes into effect in 10 days, and so we'll be moving as quickly as we can and look forward to more information that we can share as soon as we have it. Thanks so much all of you for being here. We really appreciate it. Have a great day.